of new business before the board tonight. First up is ordinance 1718, the commemorative sign ordinance. This is before the board tonight for approval on first reading.
I move we approve it.
Motion been made by Alderwoman Barr,
Second.
second by Alderwoman Yarber. For approval on first reading of the commemorative sign ordinance. We're in discussion. Alderman Phelps.
I've spoken to this twice before, and I may be the only one that feels this way. I have a lot of concern about doing this in general, simply because there have been so many different requests to honor the lives of people that have affected our community. And I know that we've got, the ordinance calls for the street sign to say that it is Isaac Hayes Avenue, I believe is the words, and I'm concerned about the confusion factor, number one, but that's not my primary concern. My primary concern is that I think we'll end up with commemorative signs all over the town. I know of at least 6 that will be, but you can't be brought, because the Public Works, I think wisely, decided not to proceed with that practice, yet these applications were already in front of them. But my concern has nothing to do with honorees, is that I don't know where we stop with people who have honored our town and have done such a fine job of helping our citizens, and I don't know where to stop doing it, is my point.
Any further discussion regarding the first passage of ordinance 1718? Alderman Morris.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of naming new streets. I don't like the idea of renaming or whatever the streets we have. And I've had calls, I don't know if anybody else has, to be not in favor of this. That's all I've had no on the other side. So,
Any further discussion? Alderwoman Barr.
I would hate for us to vote this down because of the fact that the request was in before we decided we wasn't gonna take any more. And then also we found out today that the state is gonna give us a commemorative plaque. And it seems really ironic that we don't wanna name a street for Isaac Hayes when the state is giving us a plaque to honor him here. So I think that we need to really think about this if we vote it down. It doesn't look good.
Any further discussion? Motion's been made and properly seconded for the adoption on first reading of ordinance 1718, the installation of the Isaac Hayes Avenue commemorative street sign. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I
I don't normally have eyes on opposition.
Nate.
Did I hear it right? 1 in favor?
1 in favor and others opposed.
We've got 1 in favor, 3 not in favor, and 1 abstention. The ordinance fails on first reading. Next up, you will see a resolution rescinding the street naming policy. That resolution is in your packet following the floodplain ordinance.
Yes, are we gonna address this again, or, if we're gonna rescind this policy, are we not gonna have a policy about naming streets?
If I remember the discussion, I think the vote out of the Finance Committee was to take the renaming issue off the table entirely. If someone else clarifies my memory on that discussion.
I thought it was out of Public Works and Code.
Out of Public Works?
It didn't come out of Public Works, because I'm on Public Works, we had to discuss that. And we had, if this was a resolution, how did we do an ordinance for naming Isaac Hayes Street? That's what, this is.
The discussion surrounded that to say, since that had already begun, it would go to a vote, and then after that, those 2 items, requesting a rename, came before this board, then the resolution would come before the board following that to rescind the street renaming policy altogether. Madam Attorney.
I could tell you that there are guidelines in subdivision regulations for new streets on what to name streets, and the developer or property owner gets to name those, and once the plat's approved, the street names are basically accepted by the city. If we do away with this policy, it wouldn't necessarily prevent the board from ever taking up a request should there be something, you know, I mean, it wouldn't prevent it if you're from doing that at any time. The reason why we did the policy was when there was a request to do the commemorative name on Symington for the pastor. There wasn't a policy in place at the time, so the board went through with that one, so we put a policy in place. Taking it away just means there's not a policy for it.
Well, but we didn't follow the policy when we, on the one that we said we wasn't gonna do until we get this one done. Well, we had,
I
okay,
misunderstood you, I'm sorry.
Okay, we had, it came before the board to rename, Spring Street for Isaac Hayes.
Yes, ma'am, the
And then that
commemorative
was,
name.
but it wasn't done according to the policy. We did an ordinance on that,
That policy was adopted via ordinance, I believe.
but it was done on a resolution.
Or was it?
Doing the commemorative name was by ordinance, but we passed the policies and procedures by resolution, because we weren't required to have that, but when the request to name Symington for the pastor came up, and we thought, at the time, my recollection was, let's have a policy in place for this, and so we did that, and the policy said, if we're gonna do this commemorative name, that is done by ordinance. So my recollection was that there was the ordinance, they wanted to address the applications for commemorative naming before they did away with the policy altogether, because those had been submitted and should be addressed.
Okay,
But
but it was done, the doing away with it was done. The not naming the street was done by ordinance.
yes, ma'am.
But this was a resolution to do it when we,
The resolution
To
that was
approve the
passed regarding
policy.
the policies and procedures, in the policy, in the original policy that was passed, it was required that the board pass it via an ordinance form. Yeah.
I don't remember that. That's what I'm having trouble
Yes, ma'am.
with, the resolution versus the ordinance.
The resolution, the policies and procedures for the street renaming were passed via ordinance. And via resolution. And in the
Correct.
resolution, it established that any street renaming had to come to this board via ordinance.
Correct.
Yep.
And the resolution that we established, the name, the streets, had that in there that we would do it by ordinance? when we-
The policy said if you do a commemorative street renaming, so you're not straight changing the address or anything like that, just the commemorative sign, the approval of those had to be done by ordinance through this board. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any further questions? Alderman Phelps.
Can you draw the distinction, though, between the commemorative renaming, which is what I thought came out of committee, versus a street naming policy?
Yes, the commemorative naming policy is just to put a blue or brown street sign over and above the legal street name. So it doesn't change the address, it doesn't change anything about the actual street name, it's just an honorary distinction, essentially.
Any further discussion on the amended motion which has been properly seconded? Hear none, all those in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
The ayes have it, the amended motion is adopted.